spot here that says introductions. I'm going to look around and see if we do introductions, we're going to burn up, 15, 20 minutes of time. And I'm worried that that's going to keep people from being heard if they have a chance. So are you guys okay if I just say welcome and we kind of scoot into this one? Does that work okay? That way we'll have a little bit more time for the conversation. We'll have a little bit of time
Steve, can we introduce ourselves when we speak maybe?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a great point. When you speak, please introduce yourself. Please say, I'm Steve. And
Europa?
What's that?
Came from Europa?
Yeah, that works perfect. That works perfect. So that's a good idea. We'll do that. A couple of things. I know that all of you don't have an agenda, so let me tell you just ahead of time where we're headed today. I want to talk a little bit about the purpose and the structure of our meeting here. I want to talk about Denver Department of Housing Stability, and each one of these that we talk about, we're not just going to talk. I'm going to ask you what you think. I'm going to ask you if you have questions. I'm going to ask you for feedback. Third thing I want to look at is open issues. Any concerns that are out there that we need to look at. And what I've got jotted on the agenda is the play program, the property storage notification system, and questions regarding ongoing cleanup and property removal. So we'll get to that part. We'll talk about that part. We'll spend some time on that. Also, we have some new business pieces. And under that area, we're going to talk about proposals for storage. I think, Luke, you've got a handout and you've got some information that you want to propose as far as storage lockers on private property. I want to hear a little bit about shelter experiences. And so I'm going to ask you, tell me, what's your experience when it comes to the shelter? Because I want to get some feedback on that. I think that'll be important. And then I want to also talk about what do we do for future agenda items? How do we make sure we're communicating this back to the broader homeless community? How do we get the information out? How do we make sure that we have an agenda that speaks to everybody's needs? So we kind of tried to put this agenda together best we could for the very first meeting. But I'm going to ask you, how do you want to build the agenda going forward? How do we want to make sure that we're hearing all of the voices that we need to? And then we'll be done. I've got about an hour and a half for our meeting, so we're going to jam all of that into the time we have. One last reminder, don't be shy and bashful. Make sure we finish up that pizza, okay? Let me start by saying I've got Wendy and Britta. Wendy Shea is the Assistant City Attorney, and Britta Fisher is Executive Director of the Department of Housing and Stability. And you guys are going to talk a little bit about purpose and kind of, why we're here. So you probably want to stand up here maybe? You okay with that?
Sure.
Okay. And then please remember, I'm going to come back and I'm going to ask questions, comments, anything you want to say about that, okay? Lisa.
Hey Steve, and Lisa Calderon, Chief of Staff for Councilman Candy Sidalaka. Just a clarifying question. So you're having representatives of the city kind of give their opening comments. Mm-hmm. Is Denver Homeless Out Loud or anyone else
I'm going to turn.
Also going to give their opening comments?
I'm going to turn.
Have a balanced conversation.
I don't have a list of people here, but I'm going to turn and say any comments, any questions, anything that you need to say. So, Teresa, if that's the point where you
just as a note, the contractor's paid by the city.
Okay. So that's what we're kind of doing. Again, bear in mind this is our first agenda, so we're kind of trying to find our way through this. So go ahead.
Hi, I'm Britta Fisher. I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Housing Stability, and I'll be conveying a few things today, but I think the biggest thing that I hear from all...
Just to give a little context also for folks who don't know, this, as was mentioned, came out of a lawsuit settlement, which some of you might be aware of, that has to do with our property rights and the sweeps. And so part of the point of having these meetings that we advocated for in Denver Homeless Out Loud is so that there's an opportunity for people who are on the streets who are affected by this shit on a daily basis to give direct input to the city officials who are making these decisions and who are responsible for following through on the lawsuit settlement. So it's broader than just the lawsuit settlement and just this, the sweeps and stuff, but that's the context of where it came from my perspective, as somebody with Denver Homeless Out Loud who helps to fight for this.
Robert, what I'm concerned about is I read that lawsuit stuff. And what came out of that, it seems like the only people that benefited from that was the attorney. And because we had 4 lockers or 8 lockers, something like that, something crazy. something like that, so I'm not understanding what that lawsuit does. It didn't seem to do anything.
Oh, wow.
So I want to come back and talk about storage. So maybe that's one piece that we add to that. Let me ask and stay with the questions that both of you asked. How's the best way to make certain that we're communicating to the homeless community, both what takes place here and also hearing from them? How's the best way to get notice out? How's the best way to communicate? So can you give me some ideas on that? Yes, sir?
I mean, okay, this is just my opinion though.
Sure.
You keep viewing homeless people as like one big giant entity, which, I mean, I guess would kind of be a thing, but there's more than one kind of homeless. Like, you can talk about like the homeless tribe families that live, you know, out there. How you get in contact with them is most likely talking to one of the homeless tribe family leaders, is kind of what I see the setup going. Talking to like the people that are like the digital nomads who basically, you know, wander from homeless shelter to homeless shelter and just work from one place to another. Talking to them is different than talking to them, because those are two different kinds of homeless people that never really come across each other. I mean, homeless people aren't just a homeless person.
Right.
Then there's a homeless veterans. They kind of stick to themselves and they go over there because they have their own resources. Then there's the homeless, like, you know, the motel dwellers. They're homeless, but they're not really homeless. They live in motels and they pay by the day, but they're still technically homeless. Now, they don't have anything to do with any of the other kinds of homeless. So, I mean, to say, well, how do we reach the homeless? It's not like a homeless person. Like, it's not like, hey, homeless Frank, come here. You gotta know, I mean, what you're trying to reach is not a homeless person. It's
Different groups.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe the question is, how do we reach those different, how do we best reach those different groups?
May I answer the question?
Yeah.
The media is here, the press is here, like this meeting's gonna be reported on. It's a big step that we're having this meeting. A lot of people are interested to hear about it. Again, it's gonna be reported on. We have access to newspapers and the internet. We're here, yeah.
So probably media, newspapers, internet's a good way to go. Okay?
I would say one of the, try to do both things at once here, to show communication is to be responsive to the ideas that show up in the press, but then no action gets taken. A good case is what's going on with the lockers right now. This is a good idea that people are supportive of, and there's a whole lot of support behind it. But the city drags through things like zoning and all kinds of other red tape stuff. We see the same thing going on with the tiny home villages, red tape dragging. They've got money saved up for a second village, but they can't take action on it. There's a lot of issues involved in that, but one way to show that there's good communication is to have actual action rather than photo ops. So,
Good point. Good point. Other comments on that? Yes, sir.
You can make announcements here in the library,
Oh, okay. Okay.
but I mean, make sure that it's a good person, I mean, you can hear the city hears, you know, like this meeting. I told us, lying about the meeting like 3 minutes before, but
Okay.